how's it going? This is the first test of my new setup, so bear with me. This is the State of Anarchy, Carmen checking in here, and I definitely wanted to, now that I finally have some half-decent internet, connect with the audience live. It's been a minute since we've been live. It's all good. Today I want to talk about the truth behind supernatural occurrences and how what we think of as fake, a hoax, supernatural, all these other things might very well be a little bit more to it. So, without further ado, let's begin. I've been researching this stuff pretty deeply, and back in the day it was always like a comical or sort of like fantasy style investigation. I always had a feeling that something wasn't right about any of it. But as I got older and I started to look into more things about magic, rituals, what the elite do to control us, it seems that they certainly believe in the supernatural. So my question that I'm posing is this stuff real? Is what we consider in film and TV as fantasy actually something that exists in reality? And that begs a deeper question. What is reality? So we're going to explore all that and more today as we talk about the truth behind the supernatural. So I want to start off with the occult and the elite's belief in the supernatural. If you watch the interview done with Derek Rose about the Finders not too long ago, about 2019, you'll notice that a lot of the stuff that comes up with these human trafficking rings, these government agents who are moving mostly children and sometimes other adults through human trafficking circles, these people sometimes and almost always show evidence of ritualistic torture. So that begs the question, why? Why would high-level government officials who are essentially executing human trafficking contracts for money, why would these individuals commit ritualistic torture? Some people say they're just sick in the head. That's a possible explanation. But when you look deeper into it, and when you look at the symbology in some of this stuff, it seems that there's a far more nefarious motive. For example, the Bohemian Grove is a perfect example of this. If you're familiar with the video that good old Alex Jones took when he busted into the Bohemian Grove, it showed a mock ritual of a sacrifice to an owl god named Molech. So for anybody who hasn't pondered this question before, what are the rich and powerful political and financial demagogues, basically, the people who influence society on those high tier levels from the top down, why are they participating in magic rituals? Even if it's fake, why are they doing it? So there's a couple of answers to that question, but using Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is always and most likely the correct one. Are they doing this because they believe in what they're doing? Are they doing this because they believe this occult magic will grant them some type of power? Ironically, these people are in positions of power. So, is that how they got there? Is this how they maintain those positions of power? It's one thing for a bunch of kids to go off and do something in the woods and act all crazy and weird, but it's another thing for people whose reputations affect them politically to do ritualistic ceremonies. So ask yourself this question: why did the powerful and the elite do these things? And if you find that that answer is because there is some truth to it, then you're going to enjoy the rest of this podcast, because we're going to get a little deeper into it. So now I want to shift gears from the occult ritual trauma infliction done by these people in powerful positions and these human trafficking rings, and bring it into the realm of the metaphysical. Because my research has shown me that essentially what they believe is that they're contacting the other side, and they're contacting entities, malevolent ones, to make deals with them. Now, this concept isn't a foreign concept in today's culture. I mean, the concept of prayer is the concept of talking to benevolent entities or God himself in exchange, basically, to fulfill your dharma and to achieve heaven on earth. That's like the sacred contract that I believe all of us came here to fill. But religion has done a good job destroying most people's interest in that path, because nobody has their Gnostic connection with the Creator. So what this adversarial force seems to be is a supernatural force of evil. And if this is true, we really have to take this into consideration, that there might be a supernatural evil force that we're dealing with here, that we have to figure out how to combat it on that level, not just telling the politicians they can't do this, not just exposing Ghislaine Maxwell, who was arrested and convicted and found guilty now. It just came out for all the human trafficking stuff she was involved in. My friend Derek Brose has reported that even though she was found guilty on the human trafficking stuff, they did a good job of keeping the connections to the intelligence agencies out. They did a good job of keeping the ritualistic element out of it, because they want people to think they just nabbed another pedophile. But in reality, this goes much deeper, and they're willing to chop off a few heads of their own and sacrifice them to the public so that they can keep operating in the shadows. So, VOI, FYI, thank you, Mildred. If you guys stop speaking in code, it'll be a lot easier for me to respond to your comments. I'd love any input on this to increase the spontaneous direction of this podcast about the supernatural. But for now, to continue, if these occultists, if these elite truly believe in a non-human force, and they are truly contacting this non-human force, is it possible that this non-human force manifests itself elsewhere, outside of the realm of the elite, and in places and times that basically the common man inhabits? And that's where I want to get into the next thing: cryptids. So this is something, since a small child, I've always been interested in, like the werewolf movies and the vampire movies and the creature features, as they used to call them. Like once the horror stuff started moving back into the genre of like kids with black eyes trying to scare you, that's where they kind of lost me. So what I'm looking at is the fact that some of that stuff, I mean, we know about predictive programming movies all the time. They'll tell us hints of truth as a way to sort of reveal to us what they're hiding, but they'll dress it up as a fiction film so that in our conscious mind we associate these things with fiction. But what if that's actually all part of the revealing? Binary Drool, Pat, what is up, homie? It's good to see a familiar face in here. Nice to see you, brother. I'm trying to start this live stream thing back up. We just got too much to say, and we got a good internet connection now. So with that being said, I'm Wilmington, but your volume is ultra low. Thanks, Pat. I'm kind of trying to be quiet because I got sleepers, and I'm not using the best mic. The setup will improve, but I'll try to talk a little louder. I can see how it's a little low on my little settings thing, but there's not much I can do about that right now. So, anyway, back to what we were talking about. the creature features and the movies about basically non-human entities interacting with humanity is something that I think is also part of the reveal, also part of their disclosure of what they're hiding from us. And to take it into perspective, there's a legend, and not just a legend, but a whole body of research and plenty of reports on what has been termed the American, or the Michigan even, Dogman. Now, when I first heard that, I was like, this has to be bullshit. Like, I think the first time I heard about the werewolf thing, it was like on some Instagram post saying it was like some military experiment that had gone terribly wrong or something. But when I came across a researcher known as Linda Godfrey, she put me on to the fact that there seems to be sightings like this all over America of a essentially werewolf-like creature that prowls the night. So I'm going to switch to the camera view and show you what I think may actually be a video of this creature. So without further ado, let's get into that. This film is called the Gable film. Many people believe it's been hoaxed, but to me, just like the Patterson footage with the Bigfoot, which we'll get into, there are clear indications that this is not phony. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is a great angle of it stabilized. Now watch this creature. You can already see the black silhouette here, and you can see the ears. So watch this creature. It rears up, it lifts its head up, and it begins to move, and then it chases after the cameraman. So let's go over those motions again. I'll try to do the best I can with doing this live. The creature looks up, and here's what gives it away that it's not a man in a suit. Look at the hind legs. Do you see the knees coming up? Do you see the reeling? Do you see the back hip? No human can get their back hips up that high while running with their legs to the side like that. You see how the legs are to the side? They're not underneath them. Most humans would have to lift their butts up and run with their legs underneath them. But the legs are to the side with this creature. Watch, it'll show it again. He's in rest motion, and then as he starts to move, you can see as his hips go to the side that this thing is actually running on all fours like a true animal. Look, it's galloping. Like, not many humans are going to be able to gallop like that through the woods. Now, somebody made extensions to this film in the same style, and you know, it was kind of like a joke. Like at the end, it's a costume creature, and all the stuff is like fake, and they're like laughing about it. But to me, that's just to try and add to and then retroactively discredit this footage, which shows a clear animal, that is a biological creature. That is not a man in a suit. So what that thing actually is, many people, some would say it's a bear. To me, bears don't have that same build. Bears are way more vertical than they are horizontal. That creature was wide, and you could even make out the sharp, pointy ears, which, if you look into these sightings, seems to be like a staple of this creature, is that the pointy ears, like a German Shepherd. So if you want to look more into the Dogman, I recommend looking into people's testimonies of it. But Linda Godfrey is the way to go, because she has likened this to, it's less of this monster that was created by the government, or that was, but yeah. And I just see Archangel for Truth. May I ask you a question? I want to encourage all questions. If you guys can hear me, I know my volume's a little low. We'll be getting better setups as I push the mic to a better limit. But yeah, pop your questions in, and if anybody has any experiences, supernatural of the like, I would love to hear about it. Okay, so to touch finally on the end of the Dogman story, Linda Godfrey talks about how these creatures may actually be interdimensional, basically creatures that can open up portals and or wormholes, and they condense themselves physically to show up like that creature in the video. But so many of these people report disappearances, dematerializations. They see it 1 second and then it's gone the next. So for me, I think about the creature represented all over Egyptian mythology, Anubis. And if you actually look into the records of Marco Polo, and even in Chinese lore and Native American lore, you find references to dog-headed men. You see them in pictures. It's almost like a race, and they've actually come up with a term for this race, the cynocephali, of basically what the Christians would call Nephilim, or demigods, or interdimensional beings that have man-like anatomies, dogmen of the like. Now there's also the field of lycanthropy, which is not just like the cynocephali are theoretically a race of these dogmen creatures, and they stay in that form throughout their whole lives. They can dematerialize to higher dimensions, but they can also remanifest in the same kind of wormhole-like way that would explain how the Mandela effect can shift realities. That's why I love this topic, because it isn't just like scary stories about creatures. It starts to really get into the dimensional fabric of reality and how some beings can warp that and basically create portals to travel in and out of the physical world. So, oh, perfect. So Archangel for Truth asked, what is the meaning of the symbol of the triangle and the circle? And Pat, who was actually the designer of this logo, answered it. I designed it. The Alpha and the Omega intertwined to create an updated anarchy symbol. And I love that, because to me, the Alpha and the Omega represent the yin and yang, the masculine and the feminine. And it's almost like when you combine masculine and feminine energy symbolically through these symbols the way that we did, you get an entirely different logo that represents like the creation that happens when you combine these two forces. So I really love how, like, and that's always how it's been from the beginning. It was so cool to see Pat overlay those images, and that's why we've kept this logo for so long, because I truly believe that the balance of masculine and feminine energy in all people, in their hearts and in their minds, will be what creates the state of anarchy, which in my opinion is the state of enlightenment that all beings need to achieve to create a world without violence, coercion, or force. He said, so Archangel for Truth says, thank you for the explanation, but why is it so widely used by the government? So I've never seen our particular symbol used anywhere in the government, but if you're talking about in the middle of the symbol where you have a triangle inscribed in a circle, that symbol appears all over the place, like the all-seeing eye. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of that to show you guys, and then I'll teach you about the symbology of that from what I've gathered. So yeah, this is perfect. And now we get into the symbology of what we're dealing with here. So let me switch over to my computer view here. And now we have the Annuit Coeptis Novus Ordo Seclorum, which, for anybody who doesn't know, the Latin for Novus Ordo Seclorum basically translates to New World Order. If you recognize this symbol, you recognize it because it's on the back of your dollar bill. You can see a pyramid, which is a symbol for so many things. First of all, the pyramids are a symbol for the hidden technology that is being kept from us, that was used to construct these monolithic structures. And two, it's also a symbol for the pyramidal, basically, dissemination of knowledge, where the people at the bottom of the pyramid don't know or are not enlightened as the ones at the top. Now that symbol of, this is actually almost the reverse symbol, because in our logo, it's simply the, in our logo it's the triangle in the circle. In this logo, it's the circle within the triangle. And you can see this in the Masonic compass too. You can see these inscribed circles and contained geometries. And what it's supposed to represent is that the triangle is like the portal, which you get portals with triangles all the time. The Bermuda Triangle, all these different references to triangles being portals, and then the eye being the eye of the creator, or the all-seeing eye in the sky, the one true God that sees everything. That's what that symbolizes. And basically, this symbol is them trying to build a pyramid over that. They're trying to disconnect us from the all-seeing God. So that's another reason why we like our logo, is because it also kind of touches on this symbology between linearity in the triangle and the curvature of the circle, and how these two forces need to fuse to create an art that is both masculine and feminine, that is fully balanced. So that's my best bet at describing that. See the NASA symbol. Thank you for explaining. Of course. Hey, yeah, guys, I know my audio is a little low. I'm gonna do the best I can here. In fact, let me try that. Ooh, how about that? Ooh, yeah, I think I got a little bit louder, according to my little audio thing. So I'm, we're still working out the kinks. I was fucking using a video game headset, so hopefully this gets a little louder. Thanks, Arcane, for Truth, for the questions. If you got any more, keep them coming. Oh shit, Pat says he saw The Matrix 4 last night, on point to what we were just talking about. So that's really cool, man. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm a huge fan of the Matrix films. And in fact, the Matrix films even allude to magic being real, because, not to spoil it, but in The Matrix 2 and 3, Neo learns how to control reality outside of the Matrix, which means he starts using his superpowers in the real world. So that's kind of what we're getting at here, is that there is a lot of supernatural phenomena that, unknowingly or not, is being tapped into every day. Archangel for Truth says also the Star Trek communicator symbol. And yeah, I mean, symbols are reflected in all of the major publications, because a symbol is almost like spiritually a way to communicate a message. So we get into natural law, and basically the concept is that if a car is coming to hit you while you're walking down the road, and I see it and I have knowledge of it, I can tell you that a car is coming. If I withhold that information from you, I'm doing you a disservice, because you're going to get whacked out by this car. But if I tell you, and you hear me say, hey, a car's coming, and you choose to disregard what I say and still walk in front of the car, then my hands are clean karmically. And that's what the implication of these symbols is about in these movies and films, is because they secretly tell you what's up subconsciously, and whether or not you realize it isn't important. The fact of the matter is, karmically, that is enough for them to be basically not violating the rules of nature. So that's a huge reason why we see all these symbols and all these predictive programs, and why The Simpsons has to do all this stuff. So actually, let's touch on The Simpsons, interdimensional beings opening up portals, and the dreaded Mandela effect, which so many people now are starting to realize is a real phenomenon. Everybody remembers that line in Star Wars who saw that movie as Luke, I am your father. But if you pick up any copy of Star Wars, even if you go into your attic and grab the old VHS tape that you had since you were a kid, that same old VHS tape will be different. Now, why is that? Why is this happening? Why are people remembering things different than they actually happened? What is your view of the tablets of Thoth? Interestingly enough, this is connected to that. So the Emerald tablets are basically the hermetic principles worked into, essentially like an Egyptian Bible is the best way I could put it. Basically, it's rules for life, and it's the magical rules for life, and it's very tricky to interpret it, because it's written sort of like in a riddle. But most people who try to decode this stuff, there's a Billy Carson is a pretty good researcher. He has a book called Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. And he goes into how Thoth is essentially the messenger god. In Greek mythology, he was represented as Hermes. And in astrology, which is the connection of the celestial bodies to humanity, in astrology, Thoth represents Mercury, the messenger planet. So basically, the idea is that the messenger planet communicated to us the rules of discourse through the Emerald tablets. And if humanity were to follow this, they would actually be able to master their realities, essentially. So I want to shout out Pat for giving his view of the Matrix. He says, what I got out of the new Matrix was that love is far more powerful than we understand, strong enough to change the simulation. We are the creator of our creatrix. Boom, dude. It's so funny. That's kind of the point of this whole podcast. I'm taking it down the scary occult route, but the whole point is to realize that the magic of love, that's where your power lies, metaphysically and otherwise. Like, I've had experiences with paranormal entities, with something that, people would call demons, things watching you in the night, things invading your dreams, haunting you. And the only thing that ever deterred these beings and these experiences in my life was true, pure love being exuded from the heart. Whether it's love making with somebody that's truly intimate with you, not some, crazy, drug-fueled BDSM thing. That's demon food. I'm talking about like true love, two people who love each other, creating harmony in a dance. That to me was one of the most powerful ways to get rid of demons. But you can do it quite simply by yourself if you can meditate and you can produce an auric field that's strong enough to repel negative energies just by being at peace. You can defeat voodoo spells, demonic entities. These things won't be able to approach your field because you are actually collapsing the reality around you to a point where anything dark will have a dissonant experience essentially in your field, one that will jar it, one that will basically start to shake the fabric of its reality. Archangel for Truth says, thank you for sharing. I used to be attacked every night when I was young. Hey, me too, man. I used to have sleep paralysis, right? And, when I used to tell my parents, I was like 11 or some shit, and I would tell my parents that I had sleep paralysis, and they would be like, oh, well, it's just, my dad would print something out at work and bring it home. Oh, well, the internet says it's just your brain waking up before your body or some shit. But if you look into the occult nature of these things, a lot of people see sleep paralysis as a disconnection between spirit and body. And in those moments, anything else that's vying essentially for your body or for your mind is trying to keep you out, essentially. Now, what I found was when I began meditating around 21 and 22, see, in the beginning, when I was a child, I had psychic experiences. I would sleepwalk, I would see eyes in the night, I would see all sorts of crazy stuff. They would be paralyzed and unable to speak. Yeah, exactly. And like all these things would happen to me as a kid. And then as I got into like, I don't know, high school and stuff, I feel like alcohol and shitty food I was eating was like just dampening my spiritual senses. So I couldn't even tell. I wasn't even aware if any of this stuff was around me or not. And then when I was in my early 20s, I began meditating. And what meditating will do is it will open you up psychically to the other dimensions. And at first that can be scary and jarring because you might get a perception of a dimension that you don't have full authority in. Otherwise, you don't have a strong enough energy to keep yourself out of harm during those perceptions. And I noticed that. I noticed that when I was 21 and 22, I was back in my parents' house having night terrors again. And not to not to incriminate myself as a little girl, but I remember straight up being so terrified one night that I went and I slept in my parents' bed, like I literally slept next to my mom. And the irony was, in that moment, I just was cowering like a child basically. But subconsciously, what I did was I got into my mother's auric field, and her field was full of protective light. So us together were able to protect me and keep this thing away. Now, what ended up happening was the more I meditated and the more I healed myself, I found that my auric strength got so strong that it wasn't even like I had to do battle with these entities. It was like once I released enough like toxicity from my heart, from my body, and once it just returned to the light that it was when I came into this world as a child, once that became my state of being, these experiences just started to fade away. They just started to stop happening. And that's what I want to advise to people is that like you can get yourself out of these dark places. You'll have to use essentially a form of white magic, which goes by many names. The Taoists call it meditation. The Christians call it prayer. And the Christians are very powerful at summoning God's energy in dark situations. Archangel for Truth. One night I surrounded my body with holy books and then it stopped and never happened again. That is my exact point. This is what people have to understand about dark entities, is that they are not by any means at the top of the food chain. They do not at the same time have the power of God. They do not at the same time have the power that is imbued in you through your human spirit. That is infinitely more powerful. But that is under attack from the day you're born. That's what school's about. They call it breaking your spirit. I mean, the analogy couldn't be more clear. They want to break the spirit of the children so that their spiritedness, their happiness, their joy, their glee, their giddiness, their rambunctiousness, these energies that produce potent love force basically get dampened, and the self-destructive energies and the slave think and the disempowerment become the program, and then those programs basically get installed on our hard drives, and then they summon the bad entities around us. But by consciously taking back our power, by consciously saying, hey, I'm a child of God, I'm a divine spark within a body, and I cast out anything that is not in line with my highest good and divinity. When you say that in power and in fearlessness, nothing can touch you, because they can only feed on your fear and on your pain and on your suffering. And if you can use meditation and other techniques to just let all that leak out of you, like let all that be completely let go of, to where the only thing left is just your pure awareness, then nothing can replace that pure golden awareness with fear. That is the solution to dealing with all these entities, whether it's a fucking dog man, whether it's a ghost, whether it's a black figure haunting you at night, whether it's just your incessant thoughts that are constantly filling your mind with negativity and trying to convince you that you're not good enough, or that you're a bad person, or that you're not strong enough to do what you have to do. All of these things are disempowering things that don't need to exist within you. And it's funny because I was going to talk so much more about the scary stuff, but the conversation just naturally shifted to the empowering stuff. And I'll always end with that. Like, I'll never leave that stuff out. But I do like how the audience likes to push it in that direction, because in my opinion, the empowering stuff is what matters the most. So I don't want to keep this too long, because, this is sort of like a test run. I was just, finally got the opportunity to put it up and to get the stream going. Obviously got to improve on some of the tech stuff, but hey, that's what you do. Just one foot in front of the other, right, guys? So in some future episodes, I would love to talk about some of this other stuff I've been getting into. A good buddy of mine, Alfonso Fagiolo, I call him a good buddy of mine because even though I never met him, because he's from South Philly and I feel like I know him my whole life, has been talking about beating the system from the ground up by actually becoming familiar with the law and knowing how the American Constitution actually gives you the ultimate power. So we talked about power against evil spirits in this episode, but I actually, once I get more into this law stuff, which, because I've kind of been in a situation where I'm forced into this stuff, I think I'm going to be able to communicate a lot of empowering stuff to you guys. So let's see. The movie The Eternal touched on a lot on the Tablets of Thoth. So yeah, go check out that movie. It's probably more like of the revealing that they have to do, because if they just hide all this stuff from us, they'll be karmically smited by God. So what we do is we accidentally say, God, don't smite them because they told us about it because we watched that movie. Isn't that funny how that shit works? It's crazy. Love and light, Archangel for Truth. Pat, thanks for staying around through the transmission, bro. I need you and Sonny, hardcore, helping me out with the next one, bro. The State of Anarchy is slowly putting itself back together after a lot of life changes and obviously the craziness of the COVID-19 era. Just to touch on all of that, man, after 2019, in RKW 2019 was the pinnacle of everything we had done, and then right after that, the COVID thing happened, Mark Passio thing happened, we fell apart. There was just so much insanity and division. I had a kid that year, 2020, you know what I mean? Or excuse me, I had a kid in 2021, but we began the process of having the kid in summer of 2020. Pat says, Def, I love it. He's picking up what I'm putting down. I love that you're in for the streams, bro. It's so awesome that I caught you. But yeah, we've been catching up, and there's a lot. We haven't stopped with the event production. That's one thing that's carried through this whole time. And the plan is to get everybody's energy contributing in natural ways that feel good for everybody involved, so that we can make the best product. And what it really comes down to is that I've been on hiatus because we have to figure out the new publishing system. We've been on YouTube for years now. We put out great videos. Some videos have over 10,000 views, and we have a good amount of subscribers, but YouTube is just so shadow banny. It's out of all the mainstreams, in my opinion, it's the best one. Fuck Facebook, fuck Instagram. YouTube is shit, but it's the best shit out of the shit. But I'm tired of this shit. I want to move on to Hive. I want to move on to Library, and I know we're already on Library actually, but I want to get all the content there, and I want to start doing the main of our publishing on these platforms that support, alternative viewpoints and don't squander them. So without further ado, I just want to remind you guys that despite what dark creatures may be lurking in the forest, despite what dark rituals may be happening behind closed doors, despite what dark entities might even be following you around in your life. You have the power of God within you. It is your birthright to call upon that power and just cast evil out of your life, to cast temptation out of your life, to cast drug addiction out of your life, to cast sex addiction out of your life. Because the succubus and the incubus, the male and female demons of sexual lust and agony, basically, are real. And they do affect people. And I've been affected by it. I've met women that have been affected by it. It's another topic in this realm. And we'll get more into that. But for now, just remember that godliness inside of you is the most powerful force in creation. And if you can silence your mind and take a deep breath and just hold that and feel deep into your lungs, you'll feel an inkling of that power. And an inkling becomes a spark becomes embers become fire, and fires become flames. So with that, I'll let you guys go. Have a wonderful night. Pray for what's important to you. I got a saying on the wall here: do not worry about anything, pray about everything. You can substitute the word meditate. It doesn't matter how we define things, because it's not about the box that we put things in. It is about connecting with the frequency of what they actually are. So with that, I invite you to connect with the frequency that you actually are, whatever that may be. Peace.